February 19, 1943. 5:47 a.m. Kasserine Pass, central Tunisia. The first light is still a thin gray smear on the eastern ridges when the ground begins to tremble. Not from artillery yet, just a low, rolling thunder of 200 German tanks and half-tracks grinding up the narrow defile. You can almost smell the hot diesel and the fear. Dust boils up in choking clouds. American sentries in their shallow slit trenches squint through binoculars that suddenly feel useless. Panzer, Panzervor. The cry ripples across the German net. Rommel's Afrika Korps and von Arnim's 10th Panzer are coming in fast. Veterans of Tobruk, veterans of Gazala, men who have already broken better armies than this one. Down in the American lines, chaos is already king. 2 Corps headquarters is 60 miles to the rear in a comfortable cave complex nicknamed Speedy Valley. Major General Lloyd Frendahl has never even visited the front. His orders arrive late, garbled, contradictory. Units are scattered like poker chips across 50 miles of desert. Combat Command A of the 1st Armored Division is split into 3 isolated groups that can't support each other. Infantry regiments that arrived in North Africa only weeks earlier are still learning how to dig proper defensive positions. Many of the replacements literally receive their first rifles days before the attack. Then the 88s open up. The sound is like God tearing canvas. Shermans and half-tracks bloom into orange fireballs. Men who have never heard a Tiger's main gun before freeze for one fatal second. By 8 a.m., the 1st American battalions are streaming back, some running, some walking in shocked silence, many without weapons. Equipment worth millions is abandoned intact. Trucks, artillery pieces, even brand-new Sherman tanks with engines still running. By nightfall on the 20th, the Germans have punched 50 miles deep, over 6,500 American casualties in 6 days. Nearly 200 tanks and tank destroyers lost. 4,000 men taken prisoner in a single afternoon at Sidi Bouzid. German radio operators laugh openly as they listen to frantic American traffic. Where the hell is our artillery support? We're being overrun, repeat, overrun. In a command vehicle, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel scribbles a note that will echo through every German headquarters in Africa. The Americans are fantastically cowardly, their officers incompetent. General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim is even blunter with his staff. Soft, physically soft. They will never stand against real soldiers. Captured GIs are marched past grinning Panzer Grenadiers who offer cigarettes and mocking salutes. Yankee go home, war is for men. One German lieutenant writes home, "These are not the soldiers we expected. They break like glass." Yet even in the middle of the rout, something strange is happening on the high ground. Small groups of Americans, sergeants, lieutenants, even privates, refuse to run. They dig in on isolated hills, pour fire down with .30 cal machine guns until the barrels glow cherry red. At one strong point, a single platoon of the 168th Infantry holds for 9 hours against an entire camp group. When their ammunition runs out, they fix bayonets and charge. Most die where they stand. Rommel notices. In his private papers, he adds a reluctant postscript. The tactical conduct of the enemy's defense had been first class. They had recovered very quickly after the first shock, and had soon succeeded in damming up our advance by grouping their reserves to defend the passes and other suitable points. But the German High Command isn't listening to nuance. Why would they? They have just routed the supposedly invincible Americans in their very first major battle. The Wehrmacht's war diaries record the verdict in cold ink. The U.S. Army is not a serious opponent. We can finish this war before the Amish ever learn how to fight. They are wrong. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. Because 2,500 miles away, in the red Oklahoma dust of Fort Sill, a quiet revolution in killing has already begun. And across the Atlantic, a profane, pistol-packing lieutenant general named George S. Patton has just been handed the shattered remnants of 2 corps with one simple order from Eisenhower. Go fix it. The Americans are about to stop running. And when they stop running, they will start hunting. March 6, 1943. 11:12 a.m. Jebel El Guettar, southern Tunisia. The sun is already a white hammer beating down on cracked limestone. You can taste the chalk dust in every breath. A new American division, the 9th Infantry, has just relieved the mauled units of Kasserine. Their helmets still gleam factory fresh. Many of the men still smell faintly the troopship soap they used crossing the Atlantic. But something is different. Patton has arrived. He storms into 2 Corps headquarters like a thunderstorm in khakis, pearl handle .45s slapping against his thighs. The first thing he does is order every staff officer to wear full battle dress, steel helmet, and web gear. No more neckties and polished shoes in the rear. Then he fires half the headquarters staff on the spot. The rest he threatens with courts-martial if they don't start moving forward. "Gentlemen," he tells them in that high, carrying voice, "our job is not to die for our country. Our job is to make the other poor dumb son of a bitch die for his." He means it. Patton personally drives to every forward command post, stands on jeep hoods, and screams orders until his throat is raw. He relieves colonels on the spot for lack of aggression. He promotes captains who show fight. He orders night patrols, something the Germans have been doing for years, but the Americans have avoided. More importantly, he demands artillery, not the old, timid, piecemeal firing the Germans laughed at in February. He wants a new system that has been quietly perfected back at Fort Sill, the Fire Direction Center. Picture it. A canvas tent staked into red Oklahoma clay months earlier. Inside, young lieutenants and sergeants hunched over plotting boards. Slide rules clicking, voices calm but urgent. They have drilled one thing obsessively: how to take a forward observer's call, adjust fire, grid 456 to 789, enemy tanks in the open, and turn it into steel rain in under 4 minutes. They call the technique time on target. Every battery in range, sometimes dozens, fires so that the first shells on the farthest guns and closest guns arrive at the same split second. No warning ripple, no gradual crescendo, just sudden, apocalyptic silence-shattering hell. At Guettar, the Germans tried the same blitz they used at Kasserine. The 10th Panzer Division rolls forward in textbook formation, tanks in front, half-tracks behind, artillery following. Then the sky falls, not gradually, all at once. Over 200 American 105 millimeters and 155 millimeters howitzers speak together. The first concentration is so dense that German tank commanders report the earth exploding in one continuous sheet of flame. Men are thrown from their vehicles. Tracks snap like rubber bands. Within 90 seconds, a second TOT salvo crashes down, right on top of survivors who had just staggered out of their burning vehicles. A captured German major later tells his interrogators, "We have never seen anything like it. One moment the advance is proceeding normally. The next, the entire landscape is burning and screaming. There is no place to hide, no time to react." Rommel, watching from high ground through field glasses, lowers them slowly. In his diary that night, he writes one terse line: "The artillery of the Americans is something quite new. The 10th Panzer is stopped cold." Then, unthinkable for the Africa Corps, they are forced pulled back under American counterattacks. Patton's tanks, now better coordinated, actually pursue. For the first time, German units feel the sensation of being hunted. Word spreads through the Wehrmacht like poison. Do not attack where the aim is to mass their guns. Their forward observers are everywhere, climbing ridges, hiding in cactus, calling fire within minutes. If you see an American Piper Cub circling overhead, assume every gun for 20 miles is already laid on your position. The Germans begin to refer to American artillery concentrations as the Amos Tornado. They joke bitterly among themselves. The British artillery is polite. They knock before they enter. The Americans just kick the door down. Yet even as Patton's men start to taste victory, another lesson is being prepared farther north. In the green hell of the Tunisian hills, a different kind of American soldier is learning to fight. Not with guns, but with bayonets, grenades, and sheer, stubborn refusal to yield another inch of dirt. And in May 1943, when the last Axis forces in North Africa surrender, over 250,000 Germans and Italians march into captivity. Among the POWs, a quiet, recurring phrase begins to circulate. The Americans learn fast. Too fast. July 7th, 1944, 6:03 hours. Somewhere in the Bocage country south of Corentin, Normandy, The dawn is wet and close. You can feel the damp seeping through your wool shirt, through the canvas leggings, into your bones. Every hedgerow looks the same. Tall earthen banks topped with thick, tangled hawthorn and blackthorn that have grown wild for centuries. They are not fences. They are fortresses. Each one is 8 to 10 feet high, roots knit so tightly that a Sherman 75mm shell will barely scar the surface before the bank swallows the explosion. Behind every bank, a German machine gun team waits. MG-42s, the Hitler saws, are already laid on fixed lines. Mortar pits are dug deep into the reverse slope. Snipers nest in the apple trees that lean over the sunken lanes. The Germans have turned 70 square miles of French farmland into a three-dimensional killing ground, and they know every fold and ditch by heart. The 29th Infantry Division, veterans now of Omaha Beach, has been chewing through this maze for 3 weeks. Casualties are running 90% in some rifle companies. Men no longer talk about the next hedgerow. They talk about the next 10 yards. But the Americans have changed. You hear it before you see it. The soft putter of a Piper L, for cub drifting low overhead. The artillery spotter inside is a 23-year-old first lieutenant named Ellis. He has already marked 6 German positions this morning with smoke grenades and shorthand radio calls. Fire mission over. Back at the Battalion Fire Direction Center. Now a camouflage dugout with sandbag walls and a dozen plotting boards. The words are repeated instantly, for batteries answer almost in unison. Slide rules flash. Azimuths are checked. Elevations computed. Fuses set. On the way. 36 105mm howitzers and 12 155mm long toms ripple together. Not a rolling barrage. Not a creeping curtain. A single, perfectly synchronized hammer blow. Time on target. The first shells arrive together, exactly 4.2 seconds after the word fire leaves the FDC. The earth jumps. A section of hedgerow 60 yards long disappears in a boiling gray wall of dirt, smoke, and splintered branches. Men who were firing from loopholes a moment earlier are simply gone. The MG-42s go silent. Then the infantry moves, not in neat lines, not in textbook squad rushes, in small, vicious teams of 6 or 7 men who have learned the new drill by heart. Bangalore torpedoes thrust under the bank to blast a gap, white phosphorus grenades lobbed over the top to burn out dugouts, satchel charges tossed into bunkers, bar men walking forward firing from the hip to keep heads down. Behind them, engineers with bulldozer blades on Shermans shove the shattered earth aside to create instant passages for armor. The Germans call it the American creeping death. They have faced determined attackers before, British at El Alamein, Russians at Kursk, but never this combination. Overwhelming, precise, instantaneous artillery preparation followed immediately by aggressive, close-in infantry that refuses to let the defenders breathe. A captured SS Panzer Grenadier lieutenant, blood crusted across his face, tells an American interrogator later that day, "Your guns do not warn us. They simply arrive. And when they arrive, there is nothing left to do but die or surrender. We cannot maneuver. We cannot reinforce. We can only wait to be killed." By mid-July, the bocage is cracking. Operation Cobra is being prepared. General Omar Bradley has ordered 1,500 B-17s and B-24s to drop 3,400 tons of bombs on a 5-mile-wide corridor near St. Lo. But the real breakthrough will not come from the air. It will come from the ground, because the infantry and artillery teams have already learned to work as one living weapon. German field reports begin to carry a new tone. No longer mockery. Now something closer to dread. From the war diary of the 352nd Infantry Division, the American infantry no longer breaks after the first heavy losses. They press forward under their own fire like automatons. Their artillery liaison is perfect wherever we attempt to hold. The shells find us first. General Lieutenant Fritz Behrlein, commander of the Panzer-Lehr Division, one of the finest formations in the Wehrmacht, writes after losing an entire regiment in 3 days, "The Amish have become the most dangerous enemy we have faced. They fight like fanatics and support their attacks with artillery fire, such as we have never seen." Rommel, lying gravely wounded in a Paris hospital after his staff car was strafed, receives visitors and speaks quietly to one of them. If they break through here, we have lost a war in the West. Their infantry is not what was in Tunisia. It is something else entirely. And on July 25th, when the bombs finally stop falling and the dust begins to settle over the shattered landscape of Cobra, the German front does not merely bend. It shatters. The breakout begins. December 16th, 1944, 5:30 hours. The dense fir forest south of Monchaux, Ardennes, snow falls in heavy, muffling curtains. You can barely see 20 yards through the white. The cold is vicious, 20 below 0 Fahrenheit with wind chill. Frostbite claims fingers and toes before bullets do. Sentries stamp their feet to keep blood moving. Breath freezes instantly on scarf and beard. Then the forest explodes. Not with American artillery. With German. Over 1,000 guns, everything from 88 millimeters flak to 210 millimeters railway howitzers, open simultaneously along an 80-mile front. The initial barrage lasts 45 minutes. Trees snap like matchsticks. Frozen earth erupts in black geysers. Communication lines are shredded. Forward observers are buried alive. Many American outposts simply vanish under the weight of high explosive. This is Hitler's last gamble. Unternehmen walk am Rhein. The objective is simple and insane. Drive to the thinly held Ardennes. Seize the Meuse bridges. Split the Allied armies. Capture Antwerp. Force a negotiated peace. 24 German divisions, including crack Waffen-SS Panzer formations, have been assembled in absolute secrecy. Radio silence. Night movements. Deception operations. The Germans believe they have achieved complete surprise. They have, for about 36 hours. By the afternoon of the 17th, reports begin trickling into 1st Army headquarters. German armor pouring out of the woods on multiple axes. American units overrun. Road junctions lost. Entire regiments surrounded. Yet something has changed since Kasserine. The men in foxholes are not the same boys who ran in Tunisia. These are veterans. Omaha, St. Lo, Falaise Pocket, Herkin Forest. They have seen friends die in every conceivable way. They know what happens when you break. They have learned that the only thing worse than holding ground under fire is trying to live with yourself after you abandon it. At Bastogne, the 101st Airborne, truck-borne, short of winter gear, ammunition ration, receives the order to hold the road junction at all costs. Colonel Robert Sink tells his regimental staff, "We're surrounded. Good. Now they can attack in any direction." Outside the perimeter, Kampfgruppe of the 1st SS Panzer Division rolls forward, expecting another quick breakthrough. They meet something they have not encountered since Normandy. American infantry that refuses to panic. Small roadblocks manned by engineers, tank destroyer crews, and stragglers fight to the last round. When overrun, the survivors melt into the woods and reform behind the German spearheads, cutting supply lines. And everywhere the same sound returns. The soft drone of Piper Cubs and L, 5 sentinels, circling low through snow squalls. Forward observers, some of them now sergeants with 3 wound stripes, calling fire on targets they can barely see through the blizzard. The American artillery has not gone away. It has simply waited. By December 19th, the fire direction centers are alive again. Batteries that displaced undercover darkness now sit hull down behind ridges. Ammunition stacked. Guns registered on every major road and trail junction weeks earlier. When the German columns stall in traffic jams of their own making, because American fighter bombers have already created a few good roads, the howitzers speak. Time on target winter edition. Concentrations arrive without prelude. A panzer column halted at crossroads near Barak Michel simply disappears under overlapping patterns of 155 millimeters long tom shells. A Waffen-SS battalion attempting to seize the high ground at Elsenborn Ridge is caught in the open by a division's worth of artillery firing TOT. Survivors later describe the barrage as a solid wall of steel and flame that walked across the field and never stopped walking. General von Manschufel, commanding 5th Panzer Army, reports the motto on the 22nd. The enemy's artillery is annihilating our leading elements before they can deploy. Their fire is instantaneous and accurate beyond anything we experienced in Russia. We advance 10 kilometers and lose 2 days' worth of momentum. Even the fanatical SS units begin to falter. Papers column, cut off, low on fuel, surrounded, receives no reinforcements. The follow-on waves are pinned and pulverized by artillery before they can reach him. On Christmas Eve, Paper abandons his vehicles and leads the survivors on foot through the snow, leaving behind burning tigers and panthers that will never move again. By January 1945, the German offensive has collapsed into desperate local counterattacks, then retreat. The Bulge cost the Wehrmacht over 100,000 men, irreplaceable at this stage of the war. The Americans suffer heavily too, but they hold and they counterattack. In the snowy forest around Bastogne, a captured SS Panzer Grenadier is brought to an aid station, both legs shattered by artillery. As medics cut away his trousers, he looks up at the American lieutenant bending over him and speaks in halting English. You fight different now. In Tunisia you ran. In Normandy you came slow. Here you come like devils. And your guns, they never sleep. The lieutenant says nothing. He simply nods once, then moves on to the next wounded man. Outside, another Chiodi salvo crashes down somewhere along the perimeter. The ground shakes. Snow slides off pine branches in miniature avalanches. The German dream of splitting the Allies dies in that frozen forest. And with it dies any remaining illusion that the American infantry is still the soft army of 1943. April 12, 1945. 14:20 hours. A small wood-paneled room in the former Luftwaffe interrogation center near Wiesbaden, now under U.S. 7th Army control. Rain drums steadily on the tin roof. Inside, the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the faint metallic smell of wet wool uniforms. A middle-aged German officer in faded field gray sits ramrod straight at a bare wooden table. His Iron Cross First Class hangs from the second buttonhole. The ribbon is frayed. Across from him, a U.S. Army major in crisp OD fatigues takes slow, deliberate notes. A stenographer's pencil scratches softly in the corner. The German is General Lieutenant A.D. Fritz Behrlein, former commander of Panzerlehr, survivor in Normandy, the retreat across France and the Ardennes. He has been speaking for nearly 2 hours without raising his voice. The major asks the question that has been asked of dozens of senior Wehrmacht officers since the Ruhr pocket collapsed. Why did you fear the American infantry more than the British or the Russians? Behrlein does not answer immediately. He lights another cigarette with steady fingers, exhales a long plume toward the ceiling, then speaks in careful, accented English. Because the British fought like gentlemen, methodical, predictable. They shell for hours, then advance in waves we could see coming. We could prepare. We could counter. The Russians, they came like an avalanche. Endless, brutal, but slow to react, slow to coordinate. Their artillery was massive, but blind. We could slip between the barges, maneuver, strike back. The Americans, he pauses, looks down at the scarred tabletop as though seeing something far away. The Americans were different. They did not fight like soldiers who wanted to survive the war. They fought like men who had already accepted they might die and had decided to take as many of us with them as possible. But it was not only courage. It was the system. Their forward observers were fanatical. They crawled to within meters of our positions, caught fire while under machine gun bursts, corrected while wounded. Their guns answered in seconds, not minutes. And when the shells came, they came together, all of them, at the same instant. We had no warning, no chance to dig deeper or pull back our armor. One moment we were whole. The next, the company, the battalion, simply ceased to exist. I lost more men to single American artillery concentrations in Normandy than to entire British set-piece attacks. In the Bulge, we planned to overrun weak American divisions before their guns could range us. We failed. Their observers were already overhead. Their batteries were already laid. We walked into killing zones that had been prepared weeks before we even attacked. You must understand, we respected the British for their stubbornness. We feared the Russians for their numbers. But the Americans, we feared them for their efficiency. They turned killing into an industrial process. Precise, relentless, impersonal. And they learned. God, how they learned. In Tunisia, we laughed at them. By Falaise, we were running from them. By the Rhine, we were praying they would stop. He stubs out the cigarette. His voice drops almost to a whisper. I commanded one of the best panzer divisions Germany ever fielded. By August 1944, it no longer existed as a fighting formation, not because of air power alone, not because of fuel shortages alone, because American infantry and artillery worked as though they were the same arm. Wherever we turned, the shells were already waiting. That is why your infantry terrified us. Not because they were braver than the others, because they became the most perfectly supported infantry we ever faced. The major nods once, closes his notebook. The stenographer stops writing. Bayerlein is let out. In the corridor, he passes another prisoner, General Lieutenant Siegfried Westphal, formerly Rommel's chief of staff in Africa and Italy. Westphal stops, looks at Bayerlein, and asks quietly in German, "What did you tell them?" Bayerlein answers without breaking stride. The truth. They earned it. Months later, in the quiet stacks of captured German documents being translated at the Historical Division in Washington, a single sheet survives from General Oberst-Heinz Guderian's private notes, dated March 1945. The American soldier no longer resembles the man we met in 1943. He has become a technician of battle. His artillery is a decisive weapon. Their coordination between arms is superior to anything we achieved even in 1940. If we had possessed such fire support in France 1940, the war might have ended differently. We underestimated them. We paid the price. And in the rubble of Berlin, as the last shots echo and the Reichstag burns one final, bitter truth settles over the survivors of the once invincible Wehrmacht. The inexperienced amateurs of Kasserine Pass had not merely learned how to fight. They had learned how to win, and they had done it faster than any army in history.